Hi, I'm Jacqueline F. Casey, writer of the blog Gaming and Life Lessons at jacquelinefcasey.com. You can also find me on Twitter at Jack Casey, that's JACQ. I'm joined today by a special guest, Sean Busey, DM and historian, who co-hosts two podcasts with Sasha Soleta. There is Lax Historical Context, a history and whiskey, etc. review, and Checked Out, the University of Nevada, Reno Libraries podcast. Check them both out.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here recording in quarantine with you.
Happy to have you. Today we're going to review the character sheets in D&D Beyond. We will walk through each section and discuss the pros and cons of creating characters online. If you're using the free version, you will have the popular choices. However, as a paid subscriber, which we are, you will get access to the Player's Handbook's options. You can purchase content published outside of the Player's Handbook, such as Xanthar's Guide to Everything. The con is that one subscription will not give you access to everything D&D, but on the plus side, D&D Beyond does a good job of providing streamlined access to all resources and gives an option for the subscriber to share content. Let's get started.
All right, so this, when you're in the character section of D&D Beyond, right here, it takes you to this page where you have your characters splayed out. For the demonstration, of course, we are going to create a new one and review the process of creating a character.
Sorry, our internet's a little slow with everybody online during quarantine.
Yeah, it's fun. So the first option is character creation method. Because we're going to demonstrate an actual character, we're going to do standard.
Yeah, so you can do standard, which will give you that step-by-step approach. Since we're doing a beginner's video, we're going to do that. We're also going to tick off that little box at the bottom that says show help text. It's going to help us walk through everything.
It's a good instructional tool.
Right. The quick build and the randomize are more... I've used randomize before when we've had one-offs and I just want to try something new.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I fell in love with my Tiefling Warlock, because that was given to me for a one-off and I really enjoyed playing her. And then quick build might be just you want a one-off, but just a basic version of something you already know you want to play and not get attached to, right?
Exactly. So you're just going to run it real fast. You don't want to put too much effort into it. But for the purposes of instruction, we're going to do a standard character creation to show the full process.
So here we have a wall of text.
Yes.
Basically, it's telling you about how to create a character. I believe this doesn't show up if you don't click that box.
Correct. It will, basically there will be two arrow clicks through each of these tabs up at the top. And this is stuff you should know. We're not going to sit here and let you read it all because we're going to explain it as we go.
Sure.
So the beginning of it here, we're not going to bother with a name for now. That'll come later. Character preferences, this is where you can have extra content. Homebrew is stuff that's created at home. Typically, a lot of DMs don't allow it. We're not going to include it because a lot of it is created by players and DMs outside of official D&D content. It's very unbalanced. Critical Role, you may have heard of that YouTube series. They have some content that's been added in officially. We're going to leave that out. Playtest is exactly what it sounds like. It's sort of in development. They release it for players to kind of experiment a little. Magic the Gathering is an official kind of alternate universe of D&D. We don't want that for this. Same thing with Eberron. It's one of the many universes that make up broadly D&D. We're also not going to include Rick and Morty. As awesome as they are, they did a recent crossover. But again, we're going pretty standard, quick stuff here.
So I'd like to add in, if you haven't checked out Critical Role, I would. I like watching their campaigns on YouTube. Who's the DM? Matt Mercer?
Matthew Mercer, yes.
Yeah, he's really great if you just want to get an idea of some really fun D&D sessions.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who are like, "What's your favorite TV show?" And then they're like, Critical Role, because I've watched hundreds of 4 or 5 hour videos on YouTube of people playing a game. It's that good. So your advancement type, milestone or XP. In D&D, you gain XP for completing tasks or defeating enemies. A lot of DMs, myself included, use milestone, where you gain levels when you complete certain objectives or when you do certain things in a certain way.
Yeah, I tend to use milestone because it's based off of. I like to base this off of quests. They'll usually have that in the campaign itself. If something gets particularly brutal and my players survive, then I might just award with them with the next milestone.
Exactly. You can kind of experiment it with it a little more, where the pure experience points system is a little more rigid. There's less flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Hit point type, I always do fixed. That's where the amount of hit points or health points your character has is determined by race and class, which we'll get to, and then also level and then ability scores. It's kind of done automatically. Manual is where you can decide those for yourself. I've used it before. I had two players going through a campaign that was designed for a party minimum of twice that size. So I had them do manual and I put it at their maximum possible HP, just to kind of help offset that balance. But typically fixed that's good.
Exactly. And then your prerequisites. It depends. If we're only DMing for 1 or 2 people, a small party, then I will. Oh, is this just like whether you have prerequisites? I'm totally off. My apologies.
Yeah, you have to allow them. So this is, if you want to take a certain feat, maybe the feat requires a certain amount of strength. With this option on, if you don't have that strength, no matter what, you can't take that feat. Prerequisites are a good idea. Make sure people don't break the game.
Exactly. I got ahead of myself on that one, so thank you for clearing that up, Sean.
And then encumbrance is whether or not your character has to take into account the weight of all of the things they're carrying. I tend to use it.
So I'll use no encumbrance most of the time because it's not something I want to track as a player or a DM. If I do use it, then I will click off. So if you want to click the use encumbrance, and then I ignore coin weight at least. So whatever coin they find doesn't have to count against them.
Yeah, they don't have to take into account how much money they are.
I typically reward more in coin than I do in items. Items for me tend to be like a special gift.
I agree. So the modifiers, this is basically whether or not your total score or the modifier is going to be on top. I typically have the modifiers on top because that's more what you're going to reference, so it's nicer to have those more obvious and prominent on the page. Rarely does the total score matter when you're rolling. We'll get to what that means.
Yeah, I agree with the modifiers. That's the thing I forgot a lot when I first started, and that crippled me because you have to pay attention to what you do. The DM isn't typically going to pay attention to something like this because he or she is organizing so many balls in the air. So make sure you don't mess yourself up by forgetting about your modifiers.
Yeah, and then whether or not you want this private or public, we're going to do private. I don't want anyone to see this test character that may or may not actually be functional on my account when we're done. So we'll go to next. This is where we have the big explanation of race and how the traits work. Again, we're not going to read you a wall of text.
So I would say when I first started, I was wondering the difference between race and class. And I find that race is who you are. It's your ethnicity. It is it's just basically who you are, and then some of your abilities that will come with that naturally. So if you're an elf, then you will have a racial trait of dark vision, and you'll be able to see in the dark.
Yeah.
Versus human would not.
Correct.
And then class, just before we get going, I will just want to say race is who you are, and class is more of what you do.
Yeah.
So
race is who you are genetically. class is how you play.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for the source, or for the sake of this character, we're just going to have all sources turned on. These are all the things I have access to. We're going to keep this real simple. We're going to go elf, and we're going to go wood elf, because we're going to create a character, a rogue, specifically a thief. The racial traits for a wood elf, really good for that. Pretty standard.
And I'd just like to add that there are sub races within some races. That's what
A wood elf is, yeah.
a wood elf is, a sub race of the race of elf.
Yeah.
Another example is a mountain dwarf is a sub race of dwarf. Now
Correct.
you could just, I think you can just, do you have to choose a sub race, or
When
can you just generally?
No, you have to choose, because elf is more broad. You have to choose one of the subraces
Okay.
specifically. So there are some that give a little more variation, but typically, yeah, you have to choose a subrace if there are subraces.
Okay.
So we're going to choose the wood elf, and that's going to take us a little explanation of their various abilities, like dark vision, like you just mentioned, keen senses, you're proficient in this. Other things, we're not going to, spend too much time explaining them.
But what's cool about this is you had the pop-up at first that told you more about it. So before you actually selected each race, you could go through them each and read a
Yes.
little bit about them.
Yes.
And then this page comes up when you select it, and you can have a little, even more information. If you notice, there's a wood elf details page. If you click into that, then you would get the full details of whoever you're trying to play.
Correct.
So which is really nice.
Yeah. So we'll move on now to the class. Again, we have our big explanation of what a class is and how multi-classing works. We're not going to do anything like that. But remember, there are prerequisites for it. So now we're going to choose a class. So, like I said, a wood elf is a really good, strong contender to play as a rogue. Their racial and stat bonuses, they really kind of serve this well. So we're going to play as a rogue. We're going to add that class.
Yeah, you want to have, you want to pick a race and a class that fit well together. You don't have to, but if you want a competitive player and a good teammate, you want to think about what attributes go together.
Yeah.
So a tiefling and a warlock go well together. A wood elf and a rogue go well together. What else?
The popular one is the race, the Goliath, and fighter or barbarian.
Sure.
There are some race and class combinations that are going to set you up for success better. You are of course not confined to those. Experiment, play with the character creation tool and see what you can do.
Although it might be funny to have a wizard that plays like a fighter.
Yeah. Ripped Gandalf.
I don't know where you get with that, but that'd be fun.
So we're going to add the rogue class. And then, so we're starting at first level. You can see it automatically gave me a fixed hit point value.
And so you see where there are these exclamation points. Now those are going to tell you that you actually need to select something.
Yes. Specifically for proficiencies, these are skills that you're good at. Basically, any modifiers you get, if you're proficient in that, you're doubled. So, make them, these are important to the gameplay. Now we're doing a rogue. We're not quite to the point in the character where we can create a subclass or an archetype, as it's called with a rogue, but he's going to be a thief. So you want to keep that in mind. So we're going to try to do stealth. Thieves sneak around. We're going to do sleight of hand. Good for a thief. Deception. Also good for a thief. And then investigation. You might have to look for something you're trying to steal.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
I was just going to add something at the end.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was saying that this is where you want to start to think about the nuances to your character and what will work there. My only con with this program is that you can't see what each of these things are here.
Yeah.
So it would be cool if maybe they added some kind of information, even if you selected it, maybe a little icon or something so that you could see what that's about.
Yeah. And then so we're going to move to expertise now. It functions similarly to proficiency, whereas proficiency adds to your modifier, expertise doubles it. Your proficiency is doubled for any ability check you make that uses the proficiencies. So for a thief, stealth
Mm-hmm.
is borders on essential, as does thieves' tools. Thieves' tools is, it's a set of tools used to do things like pick locks, disable traps. If you're going to play as a thief, you want the expertise in thieves' tools. It's so obvious that you want that. If you look back, it's not even an option in the normal proficiency check. They want you to make that an expertise because it is vital.
Right. So just pay attention to your options and really think about what you're going for.
Right. And then sneak attack and thieves can't. These are abilities. We're not going to worry about explaining them, but you
You
get
can
them.
read. They
Yeah.
put them in there so you can read about them and understand them.
Yeah. So now we're going to move ahead to the ability scores. These determine how good your character is at certain things. There's three options. There's a standard array where there's set scores and you assign those scores to the abilities. There's a point buy system where you start with a certain number of points and increasing your attribute costs a number of points. And then manual where you can just make yourself crazy overpowered. We are going to go with the standard array.
I also like the standard array. I think it balances things out and it also forces you to think about what your top, I would say your top two attributes are,
Mm-hmm.
and then also like what your dump stat is.
Yeah.
And it's cool to have a dump stat, something you're just not good at,
Mm-hmm.
because that adds depth to your character.
Yeah. So we're doing a rogue and a thief specifically. Rogues rely heavily on dexterity and intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see here, from choosing the wood elf, we get a +2 to our dexterity score. So of the standard scores, I'm actually going to do 14. That adds 2 to the bonus, or that adds a bonus of 2 to the score, giving me a total of 16. My total modifier for the ability is 3. Your modifier, it goes up or down 1 every 2 points away from 10.
So every time you roll, let's say your DM says roll for dexterity, whatever you roll, you get to put the +3 onto. So it gives you advantage.
Exactly. If I roll a 4, I actually got a 7.
Right.
If I rolled a 19, I actually got a 22. However, there are caveats with the standard arrays that you usually have what's called a dump stat, a really low stat. Wood elves are very sleek, they're very slender, not big bodybuilders. A natural expectation for a dump stat would be in strength for a wood elf. You'll note it's 2 points away from 10, but it's going the wrong way. So my modifier is -1. So as a character, I might try to avoid situations where I need to be strong because I'm going to subtract 1 from whatever I roll. Obviously, I could still do well, but it's less likely. So this is the sort of stat that you don't want to rely on if you don't have to. The other scores for a rogue that matter most are intelligence, and then I would say everybody needs constitution, as constitution determines your health.
Okay. Yeah. And you'll see you actually have a +1 to wisdom.
I do. That's
part of the elf ancestry.
Mainly though, we wanted the wood elf for the dexterity bonus because it's vital to a rogue.
Awesome.
You can do this, and this gives you a number of stats that are pretty good.
Okay.
So we're going to do, for intelligence, we're going to go ahead and put 13 in there. I always prefer, to do 15 on constitution because the more hit points, the better. If you're playing as a wood elf and a rogue, if you get hit hard early, you're dead.
That's true.
Having constitution a little higher gives you a little more hit points and helps. Intelligence, you don't start off that hard or that smart, but I would rather rely on surviving a blow from an overpowered enemy and being able to avoid the hit with dexterity than intelligence early on.
Nice.
So wisdom, you get +1. We're going to go ahead and put
the 12.
We're going to put 10 there, and then charisma is 12. The reason I'm doing that, a thief typically exists sort of on the fringe of society. You know, sneaking around, you try to avoid people, but at the same time, if you do get caught, you might want to try to BS your way out of it. So having the ability to be a little charismatic is good, but you don't want to rely on it.
So I really like this page because it starts you out by showing you what your modifiers are from your traits, from your class and your race, and then you can see what happens when you play with the numbers.
Yeah, it's really good, and it's quick and easy to do. Just change this back, and I can put wisdom. I can put wisdom at 13 instead. It's really easy to experiment and play around and find a build for your character that you really like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a very neat visual look to it as well. Very easy to understand. Well done. And of course, you can always override it and add in other modifiers if you want to make yourself overpowered. Go ahead. So now that we're done with the ability scores, now we're going to set up the description. This is where you actually describe your character outside of game mechanics. You choose a background. This is one of the things I don't really like about this construction. I think the background should be with the class, because depending on the background that you choose, you might get automatic ability proficiencies. So for a thief, we're going to do criminal spy. It doesn't happen on this one, but if you get automatic proficiencies and you already have them selected as a part of your class, you'd get a little pop-up right here saying it's been removed from your class and you have to go back and redo it. It can be kind of a pain.
Yeah, that happened to me with my Tiefling Warlock. So I set everything up and I was happy with it, and then I came into here and I chose the haunted one, which made sense for my background, and I had to redo like my proficiencies, and it was kind of confusing.
Yeah.
So I wish that was a little more clear and maybe together.
Yeah, on the same page so you could see it side by side would make it a lot easier to use. But it doesn't do that, so we're going to choose a couple more proficiencies for this rogue. We're going to do insight just because he frequently has to, as a thief, maybe determine whether or not somebody is worth making a mark out of, or whether or not someone is maybe like an undercover police officer, all sorts of stuff like that. And then he's a wood elf, so something like nature, maybe he comes from a forest. Survival can be something like that. He's good at sort of living without fancy stuff. Any of those, we'll go with survival. Tool proficiencies, if you ever have to use some sort of a device or like a gaming set to try to get your way out of something, you can do this. Let's go with a dice set. Maybe the die are loaded. You can do some fun stuff mechanically with that. Tools. There's all sorts of tools that people can be good at using. You'll notice thieves' tools are not in here because it's pretty obvious. You want to make those an expertise option earlier in character creation, like I said. So let's do a forgery kit.
Or you could do disguise or poison. Depends.
Those are all good options for a rogue. So criminal contact is a background feature. Suggested characteristics.
So this is really a fun part for me because it helps me to develop who my character actually is. So even though these are optional, I recommend going through them because, I need the... I'm not as creative as Sean here, so I need a little bit of help. And then sometimes even looking through this, I figure out something on my own, like that's not quite right, but if I modify it, then I can add it.
Which you can. So let's say you want to choose a personality trait. I always have a plan for what to do when things go wrong. You could add that, And then down here at the characteristics, it shows up in the personality trait and you can actually edit it.
Mm-hmm.
So you might find something that gives you an idea, inspiration for something that falls under the would generally be considered a personality trait or a character flaw, something like that, and then you can make it work. You can customize it.
Sure.
Uh,
I would highly recommend doing the where did it go? There it is. Especially the flaws section.
yes.
I find that very interesting. And when you have a flaw, you can work on that to create something. I think, yeah, this one has a cool one. I have a tell that reveals when I'm lying.
Yeah.
That's something interesting you could work into your character at some point.
And it's very dangerous to have something like that for a
Mhm.
thief. It would be a really interesting character wrinkle to give yourself.
Right.
It'd make for some really fun role playing.
Mhm.
So some other ones that you have here, alignment. This is one I try as much as I can to toss this out the window when I DM. This is basically your character's behavior in the context of right and wrong, good and evil, etc. You can see it ranges from chaotic evil to lawful good. There's all sorts of variation possible within this. The campaigns I run for players, typically they're the heroes in some grand adventure, and they're generally good people trying to save things,
Mhm.
which is why I do away with this. Play the character not as someone that's gonna, go into town and kill everybody or murder hoboing, as it's called. I don't, this is a world with consequences. That's not allowed. Don't do that kind of stuff and play the character as appropriate. But a lot of characters and DMs use alignment for a lot of fun, a lot more role playing options.
And it's something maybe to pay attention to more if your character knows about any type of monster or other character they come across. Like maybe you know that certain types of dragons are lawful evil.
Yes.
So that you can say, how can I outwit this dragon?
Yes.
Or you'll know right off the bat whether something's chaotic evil, and you're like, okay, I just need to dispatch.
I have no
this
chance
creature.
of making a deal with this guy.
Yes.
We have to fight.
For me, alignment is really a cool storytelling aspect when it comes to introducing non-playable characters to your campaign.
Yes. Faith, there are no shortage of deities in D&D. Do with this what you will.
Some people are really into it. I've never really done it.
I usually just find the name of an appropriate deity to my character's background and just put that name in there, as in this is the god they worship. That's it.
Okay.
Lifestyle, this is basically it determines how wealthy your character starts out. If we're doing a thief, maybe he's a thief that steals to support a family, so he doesn't have much, but he does, he's not dying in a gutter, so we'll set him up as poor.
And you can make this lifestyle, like Sean said, match who you are. So like say you're a high elf, you might be wealthy or even an aristocrat.
Yes. Where you start, I like this, 10 gold pieces minimum. So physical characteristics, we're not going to fill this out, but you can determine, every aspect of your character's physical makeup.
Well, if you look at what the characters are for your race, or the characteristics are for your race, then you can pick things out. So like I know copper is a skin tone for wood elves. Yes. So you can put that in. There's usually a spectrum of what your height can be, I guess anyone can be skinny or bigger, but you were probably more skinny, so you'd be thinner.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know why I'm saying skinny and thinner, it's awful. Anyway, and then age for elves is something like, say you wanted a young elf, and we think of maybe a 25-year-old as human, but that's like a baby for an elf.
Yeah.
Maybe 100, 150 would be more of a younger elf.
Yeah,
so
I think elves,
just pay attention.
I think they live around 800 years.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking for young adult elf, I think the one that
maybe
I played,
200.
I think the one I played, I had him at about 180 years old.
Yeah.
and he was awful brash because he didn't have that life experience. So we're going to skip all that for now, and now we're going to go to starting equipment, where you have two options. You can choose equipment based on your character, the race and the class, or you can start with gold and just buy stuff according to the average sale price in the D&D books. I think it's easier just to do equipment, and it's also better for the character to make sure they don't have a ridiculous amount of, like one piece of crazy overpowered armor and then a bunch of really crappy weapons.
Right.
It's more character appropriate.
I think it's a good thing to start your people with the basics.
Yeah.
And give them gold as you go along, and if they want to switch things up, then that's fine.
And this also ensures that they start with all types of gear that they will, not necessarily need, but would be very good to have. Whereas if you choose gold and you buy nice armor, all of a sudden you don't have enough to afford a weapon. This kind of gets around that. So we're going to start him off with a rapier, a short bow, and then because, he's a thief, we're going to have him with a burglar's pack.
See how they included that after it?
Yeah. And
that's what they should do with those other
options. Although it is easy to switch back and forth between them.
Yeah.
But this is exactly what they should do for more options in the character creation.
To really.
So, and then also note the burglar's pack, there will be a listing for every one of these items listed in your inventory. So that's why it's going to be crazy.
So all the way at the top, you'll see attuned magical items. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Those are very special and rare.
And when you're starting at level 1, you won't get any.
Nope.
Attuned magic items they're very powerful artifacts that require a magical bond between your characters, which is what attuned is. So you'd have to equip it and then usually perform some sort of a ritual to get attuned to it.
I mean, maybe if you're starting out a wizard at level 15 or something and you brought one in with you, but
yeah, maybe. But for this guy, no. So don't worry about that for now. So anyway, so this all looks good right here, and you see you get these items as a part of the criminal spy background. Not doing too bad for starting off.
I know, you just robbed somebody, I think.
So we're going to add all this starting equipment. Now be careful to make sure that you actually equip things. You're going to hit use so that you have items equipped. You're going to wear your armor. You're going to wield your weapons. This will make sure that they're actually functional on your character sheet.
You can also equip them and unequip them on your character sheet after it is generated.
And I know there's some D&D purists out there who are freaking out right now because I'm equipping all of these weapons. Normally you have to go back and forth and equip a weapon specifically before you can use it. I like to have them all equipped just so they show on your character sheet the damage and stuff that they do. I do account for having to equip and unequip weapons in actual gameplay, but I like them all listed on the character sheet.
Because you can see and you can make a choice.
Yes. So quit freaking out there.
No, sure.
So now we're basically done. If we go to next, it's going to show, the what's next thing. The characters are created.
You can also have the start a new campaign option. That's don't worry about that. If you're the DM, then you would start a new campaign. If you're using D&D Beyond and you have a DM, then he or she should invite you to his or her campaign.
Yes. So we have two options right here. The first is to just view the character sheet. We'll do that in a second. The second is to export it to a PDF. If you wanted to print the character sheet and do classic pen and paper D&D, this is a great option for that. My only other real gripe with D&D Beyond is that sometimes, particularly with spells, it will list every spell that you could possibly use, not necessarily ones that you have equipped or prepared. So even though you might mark a spell as prepared in D&D Beyond, you still have to keep track of that a second time on the character sheet because it will list everything. I've I saw it once with inventory. I don't know if that was a one-time goof. It usually does that with spells. So
Mhm.
the other option is to view the character sheet. This is if you were going to use D&D Beyond to play.
Which is, I like it. I like to have my tablet up and just use that character sheet. I also have a app. D&D Beyond has an app, and it's just to look up certain things. So I really like to have that up on my phone while I play, while having the character sheet up on my tablet. So
Correct.
let's take a look at that character sheet.
So when you go to view character sheet, this is a totally functional character ready for play. We didn't get any messages that we needed to, correct stats or attributes, or, that something wasn't allowed due to, prerequisites rules. It's all good.
Which is nice that it actually tells you when there's something
Yes.
conflicting.
So you have your basics here. At the top, all of your attribute scores with the modifiers.
So that was when we chose to have the modifiers on top and the
Yes.
numbers are numbers. What are they?
Scores.
The scores at the bottom. Thank you.
And then you can see basic stuff, your proficiency bonus. So if you're good at something, this is how much you would add to those rolls. So you can see right here, for example, this guy gets a +1 to intelligence. The Arcana skill uses intelligence. So when a DM says make an Arcana check, you would roll and you would do +1.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that works. Another example, remember we marked in investigation as a proficiency. The proficiency bonus is +2. So if a DM asks for investigation, you get +1 for intelligence, +2 for proficiency in investigation, a total of +3.
See, this is great because it adds it up for you. Unfortunately, if you didn't know the background mechanics of the game, you might get confused and say, well, I already have +3 to here, and then I add my proficiency, so that's +5.
Yes.
So maybe that could be explained out a little bit more,
Yes.
but maybe that's being a little too. I got confused with it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was an addition until I was like, wow, I'm really overpowered for a level 2. Why do I get +7 here?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it's because proficiencies and expertise, along with just regular modifiers, it can be pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So then you see your hit points right here. Your armor class, this is where if you get attacked, someone has to roll a 14 or above to hit you.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to note that. This area right here is really important as it shows everything that you can do for attacks. Remember how I equipped everything? I do this just so I can see the damage they all do. It's not difficult to keep track of having, one item equipped, even though it shows them all technically as equipped. I prefer it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But in actual combat, you would have to take a turn to switch back and forth.
Right.
This shows what you add on to your attack roll. This shows how much your damage would be.
And what type.
Correct.
Which is nice. If you hover over it, I think it tells you.
It does.
Yeah, it's piercing damage.
Piercing damage. And then you can access your equipment quickly here. You don't have to go back and edit your character. I can unequip and equip right here. Features and traits list everything out so I can, see all my racial abilities, all these things that we sort of glossed over. My character's description, if we'd bothered to fill it in, would be right here. Whoops. And you can even further filter. Notes. This is where your character's backstory could be. Add in specific enemies. If some character wronged you at some point, you can write their name in right here. So if you come across them again, you can give them the old what for.
Or if you just generally don't like orcs.
Yeah.
Or
And then
whatever.
Extras and stuff right here. You can make notes, all that kind of stuff.
I love being able to make notes and then have it printed out if I want to print the PDF and everything's all together. It's so great.
Yep.
There is something new that D&D and Beyond just added. I saw it on Twitter. It's this little icon for rolling. I think this is it. I haven't tried it.
It is. It's rolling
a
die.
Yep, you can roll die now on your screen, which is pretty cool. So he selected the D20 and he's rolling and he has a something there, but Oh, there it is. It pops up for you.
Custom roll equals 1.
Did you get a 1?
Critical fail.
Oh, you fell.
Critical fumble. Whatever I did, I automatically failed at
You
it.
start the video over. So I just thought this was a neat little feature that they just added on.
Yeah, and you can, experiment with any sort of character you want to create. This is the basics of doing a character creation.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I think it's a really, really well designed tool.
It's great. It's really great. Oh, the other thing is you can just reset all your stats. So at the top right, you see the short rest and long rest. And so if your DM is like, take a long rest, then you can click on that.
Yeah.
And it gives you some options in there if you want, but it'll reset your spell slots, your hit points.
Let's say that in combat,
you had 106 down. I think you're dead.
Let's say that in combat I got hit. I took 4 points of damage.
Mm-hmm.
A long rest, you actually recover. So you would take the long rest, and then you would confirm it. Oh, what do you know? I healed.
He healed.
I'm back to normal. I'm as good as new. It's amazing what a little sleep does.
So over here where you have your profile picture on the left top, you can change that, of course. And then when you drop down, you have a lot of cool little things you can do. Like I like to change my theme or my backdrop.
Yeah. So we created a rogue, so let's put him in the shadows, make everything nice and gray. And then another option, you can change a portrait.
Right.
So it'll bring up suggested portraits for a wood elf. This guy looks like he's scheming. So now we can see him up in the corner up here planning a heist of a big vault.
He actually looks like a little bit of a emo-y guy.
Yeah. And he's wearing green, so he's not good for the shadows.
And I think now your dice actually changed color too.
It did.
So that's pretty cool.
So lots of character customization and character sheet customization based on the build.
Really fun. So you can also download the PDF if you want to go ahead and export to PDF.
And
it's going to come up like a traditional D&D character sheet. So if that's what you're used to and that's what you want, this is how you get it.
Yeah, it's made to look like the character sheets that you get if you buy the paper ones in book form. The layout is a little bit, different. The ability scores are here, the skills are here, actions and all that stuff. It's kind of, layout is a little bit different, and there's multiple pages because there's a lot to do. Mm-hmm. Here's all of your inventory listed out. Note there is no box to tick as to what you have equipped, which is why you would need to manage this on here.
Yeah, this is just the traditional pen and paper.
Yeah, and if I had spells, they would all be listed right here.
Mm-hmm.
At least has a mark where they're prepared, but it would still list every single spell even if you can't actually use it immediately.
Right.
So that's it.
So what do you think, Sean? Pros, cons, like, dislike?
Con is that sometimes it's a little confusing with layout. Sometimes, it would be nice to have certain features and selectable options, next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
The pros are it's very easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
We just created a character completely from scratch with all the help text on. You can get all the explanation that you could ever want. Another pro that I love, although there is a semi-con involved in it, if I'm a DM and I have all this content on D&D Beyond, I can share it with players so they can access all of these options without actually having to buy that themselves.
That's super nice.
It is very nice. The con of that is if somehow content sharing gets turned off, or if there's a goof in the system, your characters might have
they might lose some abilities.
Yeah.
Things get switched around. So
features could actually be removed without their control. So you just want to pay attention to that.
And I figured it out because it was happening to us one time, and I had the app up, and I was trying to look things up, and it didn't show. And that's how I figured out, oh no, I don't have access to all this content. And then it also affected what my character was able to do.
Yeah.
So That's happened to us a couple times, so maybe it's a bug or something, but it would be cool to get that fixed.
Yeah.
Or know a fix.
Or just be aware of it.
Mhm.
You know, it
If something looks funny.
yeah, it mostly works really well though.
And
There is a forum on D&D Beyond as well. So if you do have any problems, there's a decent chance that someone else has, and you can use it. It's a very easily searchable forum, and you can probably find a solution to any issues that you're having.
yeah, people are super helpful.
And that's also exactly actually the forum. That's where you get in touch with customer support. They do those tickets very open, very publicly, so that anyone else that's having can see it from the horse's mouth how to solve the problem.
Which is great.
It's very helpful, and they're up there in perpetuity.
You're always going to have issues
Right
with tech, and just having this solid support system, solid customer support is great.
Yeah, and they do a good job. So that's another pro. Very good, very responsive customer service.
All right. So we'll continue to use this.
Definitely.
I don't see anything better like this. If anyone knows of something interesting to try like this, let us know.
But for now, this is where it's at. I think D&D Beyond is easily the best overall, in my opinion.
So let us know your thoughts, and if you have any questions, comment below or tweet at me at Jack Casey, JACQ. Remember to like, follow, and lead. Thanks for watching.